Imagine walking into a mansion, convinced you're the smartest person in the room, ready to buy, renovate, and flip it for a fortune. But then, something shifts. The quiet woman you thought was the maid? She's not just part of the house, she owns it. And the truth she reveals flips more than just your expectations. It flips your entire worldview. This is the powerful story of how assumptions meet reality, and how legacy speaks louder than arrogance. "You can leave your shoes on. Just the maid," Marcus said, brushing past her like she was furniture. His words didn't sting Amara. Not anymore. She had heard versions of that same sentence all her life, wrapped in different voices, different faces, but always the same root. She stood by the doorway of the grand marble-floored mansion, the morning sun casting golden light across the tiled entryway. She looked like she belonged there, and she did. But to Marcus, she was invisible. Marcus Davis, the self-proclaimed luxury closer, was exactly what he appeared to be: flashy, impatient, and constantly on his phone. He rolled into the estate in his leased Tesla, sunglasses still on indoors, hair styled within an inch of its life. And behind him, his eager client, Darren, a young tech investor who barely looked old enough to rent a car. Marcus didn't ask Amara's name. He didn't ask why she was there. In his eyes, a black woman in a quiet house must be part of the cleaning staff. No questions needed. "Big place," Marcus said, scanning the foyer. "Real old school. Could stage this for $1 million listing easy. I'll need the maid to open windows and light something fresh, citrus or cookies. Buyers love that." Amara simply said, "Of course," and gave a soft smile. She had no intention of correcting him. Not yet. They walked past her, already imagining knocking down walls, modernizing fixtures, painting over the hand-painted African mosaic that had been in her family since the early 70s. Marcus held his phone up, recording a video for Instagram. "Check this out, fam. Exclusive listing coming soon. Beverly Hills vibes, black excellence vibes. Watch me turn this crusty classic into a 7-figure masterpiece." He panned across the hallway but skipped over the family portraits. Amara's family. Her grandparents in black and white. Her parents smiling in front of the fireplace on their 40th anniversary. And one of herself, at age 6, sitting at the foot of the grand piano. He didn't look. He didn't see. "How long you worked here?" Darren asked her offhandedly. "Most of my life," Amara replied. She wasn't lying. They continued into the formal living room. Tall ceilings, crown molding, polished oak floors. Darren admired the space like it was an undiscovered gem. Marcus narrated it like he'd already sold it 10 times over. "We'll gut the cabinets, rip out that weird sculpture, repaint the fireplace white. Boom. Minimal luxury. Millennials eat that up." The weird sculpture was carved by Amara's uncle, a Ghanaian artist who had spent 3 years chiseling it from stone he imported himself. Her uncle died before he could display it publicly. But here, in this house, it had always held space like a quiet guardian. Still, Amara said nothing. Her face gave nothing away. "Oh man, we'll definitely tear out that stair railing," Marcus said, pointing to the wrought iron banister. "So dated." "My father welded that by hand," Amara said softly. Marcus paused for a second, then gave a forced chuckle, assuming she was just overly sentimental about her employer's things. "You know a lot about this place, huh?" Darren asked. "I know everything," she said. They moved toward the dining room. Marcus noticed the initials etched into the wooden table, AC. You see this? He laughed. Somebody carved their name in the furniture. Can't stage over that. We'll replace it. He didn't realize the initials matched the necklace around her neck. Amara pulled out a chair quietly, the same one her mother used to sit in, humming Sam Cooke while paying the household staff with handwritten envelopes. Her parents believed in fair wages, even when they didn't have much. This was the first room we finished, she said, mostly to herself. What's that? Marcus asked, barely listening. Nothing, she said again. As they walked, Marcus started talking about listing strategy. We'll push this hard. Sell the historic charm angle to one crowd, sell the investment potential to another. I give it a month tops. What's the rush? She asked. Old houses lose value if they sit too long, he said. Besides, people love a story, especially if they can rewrite it. That was the line, the one that sat in her stomach like a stone. Rewrite the story. This house was the story. Every wall had echoes. Every tile was chosen by someone who loved it. Every room held secrets and dreams, laughter and loss. And they didn't see any of it. Don't forget to wipe down the counters before the photo shoot, Marcus said as they entered the kitchen. Stainless steel looks terrible with smudges. Amara turned to him fully for the first time, her eyes calm, her stance firm. You should take a closer look at the certificates on the wall, she said. He glanced up, uninterested. What, those plaques? She stepped closer to one. It read, Amara Collins, Harvard Business School, Class of 2004. Founder, Collins Equity Group. You're joking, he said. I'm not. Wait, this is your house? It was my grandparents' house, then my parents', now mine. Marcus's jaw tightened. His usual confidence vanished like morning fog. I thought you were the maid. Amara raised her eyebrows slightly. You didn't think. That's the problem. And in that moment, Marcus didn't just look at her. He saw her. He saw everything he'd missed. Marcus strutted through the grand hallway like he already owned the place. Phone in hand, camera pointed at his face. He spoke with practiced energy. Yo, this one's a gem, y'all. Real vintage bones. Check out that hardwood. This staircase, probably original. Place has got real Black history vibes, probably an estate sale. You know what that means. Big opportunity. Behind him, Amara followed quietly. Her heels clicked softly on the floor her grandfather had laid by hand nearly 60 years ago. Marcus moved fast, pointing out things to Darren, his client, who was equally oblivious. We'll knock this wall out, create a flowy, open vibe. Might throw in some exposed brick. Buyers love that industrial look, even in a traditional space. He gestured to the dining room. Turn this into a home office or a cigar room. Those are trendy right now. Amara didn't interrupt. She simply glanced around the space. Her father had celebrated his 60th birthday right there, surrounded by neighbors, friends, and community leaders. They moved to the next room. This would make a dope reading room, Marcus said, waving his phone around. Add some shelves, fake vintage books, maybe a leather chair no one's allowed to sit in. Instagrammable luxury. Amara looked at the bookshelves they already had, full of history, biographies, civil rights law, early Black business pioneers. Sounds profitable, she said. Marcus chuckled. Exactly. Flip it right and you double the value. That's the game. He finally turned toward her. You don't say much, huh? What's your name? Amara. Pretty name. He nodded, distracted. You've worked here long? Amara looked around the room slowly. A very long time. They continued walking. Marcus, focused on his phone, barely noticed the Harvard Business School diploma hanging by the hallway mirror. Amara Collins, class of 2004. Instead, he zoomed in on the chandelier. Original fixture. Needs a modern touch, but it'll photograph well for listings. Darren pointed to an old wooden chest under the stairs. What about this? Storage? Amara's lips pressed together slightly. That chest had belonged to her grandmother. Inside were letters, her wedding veil, and a folded flag from her grandfather's military service. It's not just a chest, she said gently. Marcus didn't hear her. They entered the sunroom, where sunlight poured in through tall, arched windows. Marcus filmed a wide sweep. Okay, this is money. Natural light, neutral walls, good bones. We throw in some greenery, maybe a rustic table, and boom, we're in business. He leaned toward Darren. See, man, this is where they messed up. They got all this space, but no imagination. They don't see what it could be. Amara turned toward the window. Or maybe they knew exactly what it was and wanted to preserve it. Marcus looked up. Huh? Nothing, she said again. They passed more photographs, none staged, none retouched. Black excellence framed in everyday moments. Children with graduation caps, elders with newspapers, women in church dresses, men in work boots holding blueprints. Family must have been important to them, Darren said. It still is, Amara replied. They didn't catch that either. Marcus kept pointing out potential demo spots. Rip this out, replace this, paint this over, put some fake flowers here. Every item he planned to remove was tied to a memory, a moment, a face. I'll be honest, he said, lowering his voice like he was about to share a secret. Old homes like this, they sit for years. Families pass them down, then can't keep up with maintenance. Emotional value doesn't pay property tax, you know. Amara stayed silent. Eventually, he continued, they give up, can't keep up with the market. Then someone like me comes in, sees the value, gives them a fair offer, everyone wins. He smiled confidently, the smile of a man who thought he understood the world. They passed a wall lined with old framed newspaper clippings. One headline read, Local couple builds wealth in a white neighborhood. Another, Collins family donates $50,000 to rebuild black-owned bookstore after 1992 riots. Darren paused. Yo, these people were legit. Marcus nodded vaguely. Yeah, cool, but the place still needs work. He missed the message, missed the legacy. You know, he said to Amara, I bet it's weird seeing this house get flipped, huh? You probably have memories here. Amara looked him in the eye. I remember every single corner, she said, the way the tile felt on my feet as a child, the sound of my mother's heels on these steps, the smell of cinnamon rolls on Saturday mornings, my first kiss in the garden, my father's last laugh in this very hallway. Marcus looked taken aback. You grew up here? Yes. So your family worked for the owners? Number. My family were the owners. The words hung in the air like a challenge, but Marcus didn't understand, not yet. He just gave a confused chuckle and moved on to the master bedroom. "We can flip this one easily," he muttered to Darren. "New paint, updated lighting, call it transitional minimalist chic, and people will line up." Behind them, Amara stopped walking. Her silence was no longer passive. It was heavy, waiting. She looked at the mirror above the fireplace, still engraved with her parents' initials. She looked at her reflection, then looked at them. "Some stories can't be flipped," she whispered. Marcus didn't turn around. He was already talking again. "Men, once we finish this tour, I'll call the listing team. You'll be in escrow in a week, easy." But Amara wasn't following anymore. She was preparing for the truth that would stop Marcus mid-sentence, the truth that would rewrite his story forever. Marcus stepped into the dining room, still in performance mode. He adjusted his jacket, held up his phone, and began narrating again for his Instagram followers. Classic old-school vibes in here. Look at this. Solid wood table, heavy chandelier. Outdated, but charming. Bet the owners were serious traditionalists. He chuckled and ran his fingers across the surface of the long mahogany table. His eyes landed on something carved along the edge. Initials? AC. Maybe some sentimental touch from back in the day. We'll have to refinish the table, clean it up for staging. He tapped the edge dismissively. Still nice bones, probably built by hand. People did that back then. Behind him, Amara stood in the doorway, the light from the hallway casting a glow behind her. Her face was calm, unreadable, but her silence had weight now, and it was about to speak louder than any words. "They weren't just traditionalists," she said softly, stepping into the room. "They were visionaries." Marcus turned, half listening, half scrolling through his phone. "Huh? What was that?" I said, they were visionaries. There was a beat of silence, not from Amara, but from the house itself, as if it too was waiting. Marcus lowered his phone and raised an eyebrow. "You talk like you knew them." Amara didn't answer right away. Instead, she walked slowly to the table, her fingers grazing the surface with gentle reverence. She stood at the head of the table, the same spot where her father had led family dinners, where business deals were signed, and where her mother had prayed before every decision. She placed her hand on the carved initials. Her voice, when it came, was soft but steady. "I did know them." Marcus blinked. Darren, standing in the hallway behind her, looked confused. "My grandparents built this house," Amara continued, "brick by brick. They bought this land in 1962 when black families were being told to stay in their place." She looked up. Her eyes weren't angry. They were rooted, deep, like the foundation of the home they stood in. "My parents ran 3 successful businesses from this dining room. This very table saw meetings, negotiations, community planning. It held meals and dreams at the same time." Marcus laughed nervously. "Wait, hold on, you mean—" "When they passed," she interrupted, "they left it to me." Silence. Real silence. Marcus took a half step back, unsure if she was joking. "You're saying this house is yours?" Amara turned to face him completely now. Her shoulders were squared, chin lifted, not with arrogance, but with assurance. She was standing in her truth. Yes, Marcus, I'm not the maid. His face dropped. I'm the owner, Amara Collins. His phone slipped slightly in his grip. I invited your firm to view the property because I'm exploring partners to help transform it into something meaningful. Something that honors my family's legacy. Her voice didn't rise, but it cut through the air like a bell. But clearly, you made up your mind about me the moment you saw my skin, my clothes, my silence. Marcus's mouth opened, then closed. Nothing came out. Darren stepped into the room slowly, unsure what to say. The chandelier above flickered softly, casting delicate shadows across the table. The initials AC gleamed under the light. You walked through my house calling it dusty, Amara continued. You called my family's memories outdated. You talked about flipping a home you didn't even try to understand. Her eyes locked onto his. You never asked me who I was. You just assumed. Marcus's hands fell to his sides. The slick bravado he wore like armor had vanished. His voice, when he finally spoke, was small. I didn't mean to offend. But you did, she said, cutting him off gently. And worse, you dismissed me. Darren, to his credit, looked stunned. I thought she was showing us around as part of the staff, he murmured. You both did, Amara replied. Because that's the story people like you are used to seeing. A black woman in a nice house? She must be the help. Her words weren't shouted. They didn't need to be. The shame wasn't in her tone. It was in the reflection now, forming in Marcus's own mind. Every room you walked through, she said, motioning toward the hallway, was built on sacrifice, love, resistance, and you treated it like a blank canvas, something to be painted over. I didn't know, Marcus whispered. You didn't ask, she answered. Another pause, the kind that lingers. And let me be clear, she said. I'm not angry. I'm aware. I've dealt with this before. People walk into my life, my spaces, and tell me what I should do with what I've earned, what I've protected. She stepped closer. But I'm no longer interested in shrinking to make others comfortable. Not in my house. Marcus nodded slowly, almost ashamed. I understand, he said finally. Do you? He didn't respond. I'll be contacting your firm, Amara said. Not for a contract, but to inform them that their representative needs training, not in sales, but in respect. She moved toward the hallway, then paused at the door. You were right about one thing, Marcus, she said, turning over her shoulder. This place does have history, and you just became a part of it. For all the wrong reasons. Then she walked away. Marcus remained frozen, still standing by the table, the weight of the moment finally pressing down. And in that grand, echoing dining room, filled with decades of legacy, the silence was loud. Amara opened the tall glass doors to the backyard, and a soft breeze drifted in. The scent of jasmine and fresh-cut grass mixed with the warmth of the California sun. She didn't look back to see if Marcus followed. She didn't need to. He trailed behind, quiet now, no longer recording, no longer commenting. The backyard was a sanctuary. A koi pond sat in the center, its water glittering like spilled diamonds in the sunlight. Her grandfather had dug it with his own hands in the 1970s, not because he had to, but because he wanted to create beauty for his family, for the future. Surrounding the pond were blooming hibiscus and roses that her mother had planted one spring after her second miscarriage, hoping new life would follow grief. Amara stopped at the edge of the pond. "My family came from nothing," she said softly. "Nothing but faith and fire." Marcus stood beside her, his usual confidence stripped away by the weight of everything she had revealed. He looked at the water, hands in his pockets. "My grandfather," she continued, "was a janitor at the Union Bank downtown. He cleaned floors for 35 years. And my grandmother? She was a seamstress. She sewed gowns for white women in Bel Air who wouldn't even let her use their bathroom." Her voice didn't tremble. It stood like the foundation under their feet. They didn't get loans. They didn't get handouts. They saved every penny. And one day, when everyone said they couldn't, they bought this land. She turned toward Marcus, her eyes deep with memory. It wasn't just a house to them. It was proof that black families could dream and own and preserve something that couldn't be taken away in a headline or a policy. Marcus swallowed hard. "I didn't mean to disrespect." "But you did," she said gently but firmly. The words didn't hit like a slap. They landed like a mirror. "Not because you're evil, but because you never stopped to consider that this space could belong to someone like me." She watched him carefully. "You assumed because I was silent, I must be less. Because I wore flats instead of heels and didn't walk in with a briefcase, that I had no power here. You saw skin, not ownership." Marcus looked down at his shoes, at the gravel beneath them. "I've made assumptions before," he admitted. "But not like this. Not this deep." Amara looked out over the garden. The oak tree in the back corner had been planted on the day her parents closed the deal on the house. She had buried her first dog under it. It had shade, scars, and strength. "This house has heard joy," she said. "It's heard grief too. Weddings, funerals, laughter after power outages, arguments over business risks, gospel music on Sunday mornings. It's alive with who we are." Marcus nodded slowly. "I see that now." "Do you?" she asked, not as a challenge, but as a question only his soul could answer. He nodded again, slower this time. "I think I'm starting to." There was a long pause. Birds chirped, water trickled gently in the pond. The house behind them stood proud and still. "So," he finally said, "you're not selling." Amara smiled. It wasn't smug. It was steady, calm, almost maternal. "No, Marcus, I'm not selling. I'm building." He looked over at her. "Building what?" She turned fully toward him now. The wind lifted her curls slightly as she spoke. "I'm turning this house into a center for black youth," she said. "A place where kids from neighborhoods like the one my grandparents grew up in can come learn about entrepreneurship, history, art, and legacy." "A community center?" he asked. "More than that," she said. "A legacy incubator. A space where they can see themselves not as survivors, but as builders, creators, owners." She pointed toward the sunroom. That'll be the reading lounge. Books by Black authors, thinkers, and leaders. She motioned toward the side patio. We'll host workshops there. How to manage money, how to start a business, how to navigate systems that were never designed for us. She looked at him again. I don't want another generation to think wealth is something they need to beg for, or that dignity is something they have to earn. It's already theirs. They just need a place that reminds them. Marcus exhaled. His shoulders dropped slightly, like something inside him was finally releasing. That's powerful, he said quietly. Amara gave a small nod. It's necessary. Another silence. Not awkward, reflective. I spent so much time thinking this place needed updating, Marcus said, that it was stuck in the past. You were right about one thing, she replied. It is full of history. But that's not something to erase. It's something to build from. He nodded again. And I just walked in here ready to erase it. She tilted her head. You're not the first, and you won't be the last. But now you know better. He glanced at the koi pond, at the vibrant colors swimming beneath the surface. So, what happens next? He asked. Amara smiled. Next, she said, we start planting seeds. She picked up a small watering can from beside the porch and walked to a patch of soil her father had once tended. A few young sprouts poked through. My niece and nephew helped me plant these, she said. Every Saturday we work on the garden. I tell them stories, they tell me dreams. She looked up at Marcus. That's legacy. Not marble floors or staged furniture. This. Passing on something that will outlive you. Marcus placed a hand over his heart, almost involuntarily. I've got a lot to rethink, he murmured. Amara nodded. Then this house has already done its job. Marcus looked down, the echo of Amara's words still hanging in the air like morning mist. For the first time that day, he wasn't thinking about profits, square footage, or engagement stats. He wasn't thinking about his next post or pitch. He was just quiet, present. He rubbed the back of his neck, unsure of what to say. I didn't mean to disrespect you, he said, his voice low. I judged you based on nothing, based on what I assumed, not what I saw or heard. Amara didn't say anything right away. She just watched him, her arms folded gently, not in anger, but in thought. Then she gave a slow nod. Now you know, she said softly. That's the thing about prejudice. It doesn't always shout. Sometimes it's just silence, a blind spot, a closed door you didn't even realize you walked past. Marcus nodded slowly. I thought I was better than that. Amara gave him a small, almost sad smile. A lot of people do. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his phone. The screen was still open on his Instagram app. He looked at his own reflection in the camera lens. Then, without a word, he pressed the side button and turned it off. The moment didn't belong to content anymore. It never had. No more stories, no more filters. He slid the phone back into his pocket. The garden around them was alive with sound, birds chirping, water rippling, wind humming through the trees. For a long moment, they just stood there in it. Then he looked back toward the house. So, you're not selling? Amara chuckled, The sound light, but strong. Number, I'm renovating. He raised an eyebrow. Into what? She looked out across the yard. Into a future. Marcus tilted his head. What kind of future? One that starts with opportunity, she said. I'm going to turn this house into a space for young Black entrepreneurs. A mentorship hub. A place where kids from neighborhoods like my grandparents came from can walk into a room and see that power doesn't have to come with apology. Her eyes lit up as she spoke, and Marcus could see it now. The vision she carried. It was more than walls and ceilings. It was legacy woven into action. We'll host workshops on starting businesses, managing credit, pitching ideas, she said. There'll be quiet spaces for creators, rooms with whiteboards and vision boards, even a podcast studio. She motioned toward the guest house in the back. That's going to be our digital lab. Cameras, editing bays, grant writing seminars, everything I wish I'd had when I was 15 and dreaming but unsure where to start. Marcus let out a low breath. That's amazing. Honestly. He paused, looking at the koi pond again. This place will change lives. Amara nodded. That's the goal. Because legacy isn't just about what you leave behind. It's about what you make possible for others while you're still here. He looked back at her, really looked this time. No assumptions, no masks. I have a lot to learn, he said quietly. You're not the only one, Amara replied. But learning starts when listening begins. She stepped toward the porch. Come with me. Marcus followed as she led him to a small stone bench near the rose bushes. She motioned for him to sit. Across from them was a small plaque embedded in the ground. He leaned forward and read the inscription, "In loving memory of James and Ruth Collins. They dreamed, they built, they loved." Below the quote was a line added by Amara. Legacy isn't what you take, it's what you make. He stared at the words for a long moment. This place, it's sacred. It is, Amara agreed. Not because it's perfect, but because it carries the weight of every hand that ever gave without expecting applause. He looked at her. You're remarkable. She smiled gently. I'm just a reflection of those who came before me. A hummingbird zipped by, hovering briefly above the lavender before darting off. Marcus stood. Well, he said, clearing his throat. Thank you for everything, the honesty, the grace. Amara nodded. Grace matters, but so does accountability. He nodded slowly. Next time I walk into a house like this, she raised her eyebrows slightly. Maybe I won't assume the woman holding the keys is here to clean up after me. He finished. Amara tilted her head. That would be a good start. There was no malice in her voice, just truth. Marcus took a step backward, still facing her. I hope you'll still consider my firm. Maybe someone else from the team could be a better fit. I'll think about it, she said honestly. But whatever happens, this house will grow something powerful, with or without you. He gave a small bow of respect. I believe that. He turned to walk down the path toward the gate. As he reached the driveway, he paused and looked back one last time. Amara stood there on the porch, sunlight behind her, framed by the home that had outlived bias, survived time, and now stood ready to birth something new. He raised a hand in silent farewell. She returned the gesture, then turned and walked inside. Inside to the blueprints. Inside to the future. Inside to continue what her family had started. And as the door closed behind her, it didn't sound like an ending. It sounded like a beginning. Now that you've heard the story, take a moment. What did it make you feel? What did it stir inside you? Maybe it made you angry. Maybe it made you uncomfortable. Or maybe it made you reflect on a time you made an assumption without meaning to. This wasn't just about a mistaken identity. This was about something much deeper, about the way we see people, about the invisible labels we place on others before they even speak, about how quickly we decide who someone is, without ever learning who they are. Amara wasn't a maid. She was the owner, a leader, a legacy bearer. But she didn't look like who Marcus expected to be powerful, and that's the tragedy of unconscious bias. It blinds us to truth. It strips dignity. And worst of all, it's so normal, we barely notice when we do it. But stories like this, they're a mirror. They ask us to look at ourselves and ask, what are we still blind to? Who have we dismissed, misjudged, or overlooked just because they didn't fit the image in our mind? And that's the real lesson here, maybe the biggest one. If we want a more just world, we must first unlearn the lens we were handed and start seeing people through the truth of their humanity, not the shadows of our assumptions. Respect starts not when someone proves their worth, but when we believe they already have it. So the next time you walk into a room, a home, or someone's life, don't look for roles. Look for story. Look for truth. And lead with humility. That's how change begins. Not all stories end in revenge. Sometimes the best clapback is legacy. If this story moved you, if it made you feel something real, don't let it stop here. At the U.S. Blackstories, we don't just tell stories. We open doors into lives too often misunderstood, unheard, or unseen. Through fiction, we shine a light on the truths that shape Black experience in America. Stories of struggle, legacy, dignity, and transformation. And every story carries a message, a mirror, a lesson, a moment of empathy we all need. But here's the thing. These stories need you. They need listeners. They need voices to share them, reflect on them, and keep the conversation going. So, if you believe in the power of storytelling to spark change, if you want more narratives that challenge bias, uplift heritage, and teach respect, then this is your space. Subscribe to the U.S. Blackstories today. Hit the bell so you never miss a story that just might change the way you see the world. And leave us a comment. What did this story make you feel?